This chapter was an absolute whirlwind of strategic scheming and exhilarating invention. Yufu's return isn't just a reunion, it's a masterclass in Han manipulation, with Chieftain Xin utterly oblivious to the fatal bridge being built to his tribe's doom. The contrast between Xin's naive enthusiasm and the Han's cold, calculated ambition is stark and brilliant. But what truly had me glued was the incredibly detailed account of technological leaps. Following the protagonist's journey to create glass, the trial and error, the risky use of arsenic as a fining agent, the eventual triumph of clear and colored glass, was immensely satisfying. Then, the equally gripping development of the Yasi gas lamp, overcoming explosions and perfecting seals. It's this raw, hands-on problem-solving that makes it so immersive. With a functional glass industry and gaslight now realities, and lighthouses and even bicycles being conceptualized, the Han tribe is on the cusp of a monumental transformation. How will these innovations accelerate their already audacious plans for dominance? In the first year of the Zhanyuan era of the Han tribe, this year was no ordinary year. Not only was the era name changed, but it was also a year of territorial expansion for the Han tribe, practically a year of great geographical discovery as if they were on steroids. First, there was that fellow Yufu. He headed south, not only finding a waterway to the great grassland lake, but also cozying up with many tribes along the way, and incidentally, scouting out several gleaming ore veins for the Han tribe. Immediately after, he tirelessly pioneered sea routes, and word was that things were flourishing down south as well. Yufu's brother, Yu Yi, was no slouch either. He spent a year thoroughly exploring the Great Marsh Lake and, what do you know, unexpectedly discovered a waterway leading north. The guy didn't even say goodbye. He just took a boat and headed upstream. He was gone for several months, and finally, there's news today. Who knows what treasures this big brother of ours discovered after roaming around for so long. At the maidservant's call, you shot out of bed, your hair a tousled mess. The air was still cool as you shuffled into your shoes and hurried to the loofah trellis in the courtyard to meet Yunji. Yunji came over quickly, but you noticed something was off. Where was that fellow, Yuye? Yunji was holding a bamboo tube sealed with mud. The moment you saw it, you understood. Flying Eagle Express. That fellow Yuye was still out there adventuring. Chief, a letter from Yuye. It arrived early, this morning. I didn't dare open it and brought it to you immediately. Yunji respectfully handed over the bamboo tube. You didn't stand on ceremony, taking it and first examining the mud seal. It bore Yuyi's small personal stamp. Intact. Only then did you crack off the mud seal with a thwack, twist open. The cap and tip out a rolled-up object. Wrapped in a snakeskin pouch was a stack of letter paper. Good heavens, it was as thick as a brick, probably enough to knock out a wild boar. No wonder. Calligraphy with a brush, no matter how small and neat the script, takes up space. You can't write many characters on one sheet, so ending up with thick stack was perfectly normal. You opened it and took a look. Hey, your spirits immediately lifted. In the letter, Yuyi rambled on, saying that he'd spotted an elusive wild waterway in the northeast corner of the Great Lake and, on a whim, had set off with 1 boat and 23 men. Supplies, non-existent, but the lad had previous experience, dealing with unfamiliar tribes by the lake, so the boat was well equipped with gear. Relying on these meager provisions, they fished, caught shrimp, hunted, and gathered along the way, managing to scrounge up their own supplies. A perfect case of a self-funded official mission. He could be called the Han tribe's most dedicated sucker of an employee. You thought to yourself, good heavens, these two brothers Yu Fu and Yu Yi are practically experts at courting disaster. In primitive society, they dare to do anything. But on second thought, weren't you just as crazy back then? Venturing out alone to roam the world. Looking back now, it was truly a cringeworthy past. A cringeworthy past indeed. The letter continued, with what happened next. Logically, since they were traveling along the water, human tribes should have been near the water sources, and they should have encountered quite a few. But strangely, they encountered pitifully few tribes. Yu wrote that they did find many traces of human habitation along the way, but most were dilapidated, abandoned sites. Even more frightening, they unearthed numerous human skeletons, some bearing scorch marks, and some broken pottery jars were even stuffed with human bones. Coupled with the chaotic, devastated state of these tribal ruins, structures toppled and in disarray, it was clear their homes had been wiped out. Either the people were captured, or they had fled in utter terror. All the clues pieced together pointed to only one truth. These tribes had all been ravaged by cannibals. Those cannibal bastards, they've been quiet for a long time, you muttered to yourself. It seemed that after suffering several major setbacks at the hands of the Han tribe, the cannibals hadn't given up. They were still stirring up trouble everywhere. However, they had learned their lesson, knowing the Han tribe was a tough nut to crack and couldn't be taken on for now. So, they retracted their claws from the Han tribe and instead intensified their attacks elsewhere. Come to think of it, the cannibals weren't entirely to blame for this. If you thought about it carefully, the Han tribe might have to shoulder some of the responsibility for their current frenzy. Think about it. In their several battles with the Han tribe, when had the cannibals ever gained an advantage? Every time their forces were annihilated, hundreds at least, sometimes over 1,000. After a few such encounters, their population losses alone were heading towards 5,000. 5,000 able-bodied young men. What did that mean? In a large tribe of 40,000, that was practically all the fighting men lost. But judging by the cannibals' arrogance, these 5,000 were clearly not their entire strength. This showed how powerful these fiends were, and how devastating the losses inflicted by the Han tribe had been. It was equivalent to crippling the able-bodied workforce of a large tribe of 40,000. Such losses would make anyone cough up blood. Even the current Han tribe couldn't withstand it. Therefore, the cannibals definitely had to find a way to recoup their losses. They couldn't afford to provoke the Han tribe, but couldn't they bully other smaller tribes? And so the current frenzied situation arose. Analyzing it this way, hey, it really was the Han tribe that had pushed the cannibals to desperation, causing other small tribes to suffer. In other words, the Han tribe truly deserved to take the blame for this. Yuyi's letter was, in fact, a wake-up call for you. Boss, we can't get complacent just because we've won a few battles. Those hungry wolves to the north are still watching, and they could stage a comeback at any time. Of course, he didn't say it outright, but you understood. But then again, crisis often hides opportunity. The cannibals stirring up trouble might actually be an opportunity for the Han tribe. Several question marks instantly popped into your head. Those attacked tribes, what happened to their people? Were they captured or did they flee? If they fled, would they, like those unfortunate souls the Han tribe encountered before, band together for survival and form some kind of anti-cannibal alliance? Was there an opening for the Han tribe in all this? For example, like before, could they find these scattered remnants, play the sympathy card, absorb them, and add to the Han tribe's population? Based on past experience, this approach was reliable. You took your wife and children aboard a boat for a boat tour experience. However, the boatman had no intention of actually setting sail. It just remained steadily moored at the dock. It couldn't be helped. The kids were too young. If they really sailed out to the middle of the lake for a spin, your heart, as their father, would be in your throat. Besides, the lighthouse project over in Waishan Prefecture was expected to be lit tonight, and as the chief designer, you couldn't be absent for the final debugging and installation. The family clung to the deck railings. Little Luo Cheng was perched on your shoulders, his little face turned towards the lighthouse, giggling more merrily than anyone. This was a treat he wouldn't get with his mother. Husband, look at that roundish room up there. It's so bright. Junying, holding Luo Lan, who was sleeping like a little piglet, pointed to the glass room atop the lighthouse, which sparkled in the sunlight, her own eyes shining. That's called a glass house. Its walls, doors, and windows are all made of glass. Curved glass is too difficult to make, so we used flat panes. The entire lantern room is assembled from 16 glass walls, making it look round. The pillars and frames are forged from steel and painted white. The whole room is very transparent, and the light inside can shine in all directions. Before long, our new house will have these installed too. You plucked your son from your shoulders and explained proudly, "After lunch, I'll take you up there to broaden your horizons." Hearing this, your two wives' eyes widened, and they rubbed their hands in excitement, exclaiming repeatedly how the Han tribe was becoming more and more awesome. Listening to them, you felt a warm sense of satisfaction. The feeling of accomplishment practically overflowed from your chest. After all these things had been developed under your wise and brilliant leadership, although the lighthouse before you, compared to your original blueprints, seemed to have a slight discrepancy. All right, you had to admit there was a small miscalculation this time. In your original design, the lighthouse was clearly meant to be 20 meters high. But then you'd waved your hand, delegating the tower's construction to your subordinates, while you went off to tackle the core equipment inside. When you returned and took a look, good heavens, those earnest master workers had actually built the tower body to a height of 20 meters. Well then, the glass house just had to be stacked on top, like it or not. The final product, with the tower body, the over 4-meter-high glass house, and the cool-looking 4-bladed windmill on top, reached a height approaching 30 meters. The difference from the blueprints was so large you could practically fit an elephant in it. You were rendered speechless at the time. However, it was a good thing that being a bit taller didn't affect its functionality. At most, it was just more conspicuous. "Husband, what's that pointy thing on the very top?" Xiao Dai, completely clueless about the intricate details of its construction, pointed to the spire like a curious child. "That's a lightning rod, an iron thing. The lighthouse is so tall it's likely to get special attention from the god and goddess of thunder during storms. So a rod has to be installed to draw the lightning away. Below the rod, it's connected to steel bars hidden inside the walls, leading all the way underground. If it really gets struck by lightning, the electricity will obediently travel down the rod into the earth, and the lighthouse will be fine." You began to explain, like giving a science lesson. "Husband, you know so much." Jianying also gazed at you with admiration, just like a little fangirl. Ah, your heart swelled with pleasure. You were so proud you could burst. Right now, the lighthouse was undergoing its final beautification process. The tower body was being painted snow white, inside and out. The inside was painted white for reflection, otherwise it would be pitch dark. The outside was painted white, of course, to be eye-catching. A lighthouse is meant to be a landmark. The more conspicuous, the better. You'd want it to be visible at a glance from miles around. Moreover, on the sides of the lighthouse facing the lake and the shore, its name, which you personally chose and which held extraordinary significance, was painted in bright red, the Qimingxing Morning Star Lighthouse. You had imbued this name with 3 layers of meaning. First, it could guide ships, just like the morning star in the sky guides those who are lost. Second, in terms of appearance, the light it emitted at night would be as bright as a star in the sky. And finally, it was a spiritual symbol. This Qimingxing Lighthouse was currently the most technologically advanced structure in the Han tribe, and also the first project to massively apply advanced construction techniques. Using flat glass panes for building construction was a first. The lightning rod also made its debut, and the condensing lenses, large blowtorches, acetylene gas generation, metal welding, rubber seals, and wind-powered machinery. All these items, representing the Han tribe's most cutting-edge technology, were concentrated in this single structure. It was nothing short of a grand synthesis of the Han tribe's top technologies in the 4 major fields of metallurgy, physics, chemistry, and architecture. A guiding star leading the Han tribe towards becoming a scientifically strong power, truly deserving of the title. Oh, right. There was also a newly developed slide technology, or perhaps projector technology. This story began a week ago. At that time, you had already come up with a cool name for the lighthouse and decided, on its stylish exterior color. You then had your men paint the walls, and while they were at it, paint the name on as well. But you never would have imagined that even such a small task as painting would hit a snag. The tower was so tall, the characters for the name naturally had to be large, or else people below wouldn't be able to see them clearly. The person in charge measured it several times and came back with a long face saying, "A single character is bigger than a person. How are we supposed to write characters that big? If someone stands right in front of it to write, they can't see the proportions at all. They wouldn't even know if it's crooked." Moreover, the background was pure white, making it difficult to correct any mistakes. As soon as the person in charge reported this, your mind raced, and you immediately had an idea. Just project the characters onto the tower. Wouldn't that solve everything? Projection, you might have been stumped by it before, but now with glass and acetylene lamps, it was a piece of cake. In your previous life, as a child, you had seen people making billboards. Back then, advertising canvases weren't as advanced as they are now, where you can design any pattern or font on a computer and just run it through a printer. In those days, the advertising industry commonly used projectors for lettering. The work had to be done at night. First, they'd print the characters on paper, cut them out, and stick them onto a glass plate. At night, they'd use a projector to cast the characters onto colored adhesive sheets. The lettering artist would first trace the outline, then cut it out and stick it onto the baseboard. You didn't have a projector now, but you had acetylene lamps. Their brightness was more than adequate as a light source for a projector. Absolutely. You directly had a carpenter knock together a wooden box with a small square slot on the side for inserting a glass slide. A homemade projector, so crude, it was astonishing, was thus born. After the lighthouse's base coat was dry, you waited until night, wrote the 3 large characters, Qimingxing, on a glass slide in advance, inserted it into the wooden box, and lit a bright acetylene lamp inside. You placed this crude device next to the lighthouse, and hey presto, 3 characters, each taller than a person, were projected squarely onto the tower body. All the painters present, as well as the tribal folk craning their necks to watch the spectacle, were so astonished their eyeballs nearly popped out. Holy moly, you can even do that with this thing? Projection, to put it bluntly, has a very simple principle. It's just about light and shadow. It's just that your contraption looked a tiny bit more advanced than what primitive people played with. Actually, when it came to playing with projections, those primitive ancestors were much more skilled than you. They used sunlight and firelight to create graffiti and paintings on rocks and in caves, tricks known since the dawn of humanity. Setting aside your glass and acetylene lamp, projection itself wasn't really anything extraordinary. The outlining work after the projection had been completed long ago. Now, the painters were suspended by ropes outside, filling in the colors of the characters. You reckoned they'd soon have these imposing large characters painted neatly. You carefully checked the status of all the valves, then opened the centermost one of the 6 burner valves. Next, you strolled to the 6th floor equipment room. This place housed not only water tanks and a carbide chamber, but also an acetylene reactor, plus a steam whistle, though that thing wasn't sounded lightly. You glanced at the fueling situation, and the reactor. This egg-shaped acetylene generator, once fully charged, could burn for pretty much an entire night. By the next morning, what remained inside would mostly be slaked lime. At that point, this stuff would be emptied out, and new material would be added during the day. After checking the fueling, you tightened all the valves securely and carefully inspected the seals to ensure everything was foolproof. Then, you turned the water supply valve to the first setting. Clean water gurgled down the pipes into the reactor and began a vigorous chemical party with the calcium carbide, also known as dianchi, electric stone, inside, generating a flammable hydrocarbon, gas acetylene. The acetylene rapidly increased, rushing towards the gas filter barrel above the reactor. After passing through several layers of bamboo strips and mesh gauze, it became pure, impurity-free acetylene, traveling straight up to the lamp pipes in the top-floor glass house. At this point, you returned to the glass house. You took out a feather and carefully extended it to the nozzle in the center of the burner assembly, observing the actual gas flow. What emerged at first wasn't acetylene, but residual air from the reactor. It wasn't until you detected a faint, peculiar odor. Hey, the acetylene had arrived. You put away the feather, took out a bamboo splinter used for ignition, lit it from the portable carbide lamp you carried, and then brought it close to the lighthouse's burner. With a whoosh, a fireball erupted at the burner, and in the next instant, the fireball transformed into a jet of flame about a foot high. You casually stuck the burning bamboo splinter into a nearby water jar. With a sizzle, the flame died. Although the flame wasn't particularly large yet, the common folk gathered below the lighthouse could already clearly see the top of the tower light up, and every one of them was as worked up as if they'd been shot full of adrenaline. You didn't hesitate, operating a mechanism to lower the glass lamp chimney. Then you deftly opened 2 more of the burner's 6 gas supply valves. The incandescent white flame at the burner immediately thickened considerably, its height shooting up to over half a meter. Now the common folk gathered beneath the lighthouse could see even more clearly. The top of the tower blazed with light, and 2 thick white beams, like twin swords, imperiously tore through the inky night sky. A blurry, human figure moved about near the light. No need to ask, it was undoubtedly their great chief. Though Xiaodi, Zhan Ying, and the children were inside the tower, they could see through the windows that the dock outside was illuminated as bright as day, with countless common folk cheering and leaping for joy below. You then clattered back, down to the 6th floor equipment room, and turned the reactor's water supply valve to its maximum setting. Instantly, a more violent chemical reaction began inside the reactor, and the acetylene gas produced surged like floodwaters through an opened sluice gate. In the top-floor glass house, the burner's column of fire shot up to over a meter high. You returned to the top floor once more, and fully opened the remaining 3 burner gas supply valves. The height of the flame column instantly dropped from over a meter to about 80 centimeters, but its diameter more than doubled. At this moment, you had adjusted the burner to its maximum designed power. The entire glass house was illuminated like a small sun. You squinted as you looked outside, not daring to look directly at the fiercely burning burner. The light intensity was simply too immense, blindingly so. This was probably the limit of brightness achievable by a man-made object in this primitive world. That you began to close the doors and windows of the glass house one by one, leaving only the top-floor ventilation shaft open. Then you pulled the lever controlling the gear on the lens bracket, causing the gear to rise and mesh tightly with the power gear of the windmill above. Subsequently, the lens bracket began to rotate slowly. After carefully checking that everything was steady and secure, you went directly down from the top floor. Outside the lighthouse, countless common folk saw the tower top, as bright as day. From within that man-made miniature sun, 2 thick beams of light shot out and began to slowly sweep across the surroundings. Everyone started to shout at the top of their lungs, cheering and leaping for joy. If they hadn't witnessed such a spectacular scene with their own eyes, they would surely have thought it was a manifestation of gods or immortals. Only the people living here knew that this lighthouse had been built by their own hands. Brick. By painstaking brick. Meanwhile, on several islands in the lake, the tech-savvy folks from the laboratory had all climbed onto a coal pile that resembled a small hill. They craned their necks, gazing eagerly towards Weishan Prefecture. Why isn't it lit yet? Don't tell me there's something wrong with the lamp we made, one person fretted, scratching his head in anxiety. Don't panic, wait a bit longer. It's not completely dark yet. And so, the crowd resumed their eager wait. As the development team for the lamp, these laboratory people were more invested than anyone when they learned the lighthouse was to be lit that night. It's lit. It's lit. I see it. Quick, look over there, isn't that it? Someone on the coal pile suddenly shouted in excitement. The others instantly turned their gazes in that direction. Indeed. Just as the crowd had caught that faint glimmer of light, the ball of white light suddenly blazed with myriad rays, and 2 dazzling beams shot forth. In no time, the beams began to rotate slowly, sweeping imperiously over the several lake islands. The scene was simply majestic and powerful, so dazzling it practically seared their eyes. Success! It's lit! Our lamp really is a success. Hey, I welded those nozzles with my own 2 hands. If you're going to say that, then our team made all the valves. We deserve some credit too. All right, stop arguing. Everyone contributed. It wouldn't have worked without any one of us. We made the rubber seals on the lamp, but it wouldn't be possible without the people who made the glass either. The group of people, so excited they were gesticulating wildly, watched the beams of light continuously sweeping overhead, all talking at once as they vied for credit. In reality, they weren't truly fighting for credit, but rather overcome by a strong sense of pride, eager for others' recognition. The general sentiment was, look, that thing lit up, and I had a part in it. How awesome is that? Setong County, the Han tribe's east-west supply hub. Just as dusk was settling, people, weary from a day's work, were either wolfing down dinner at home or cooling off and shooting the breeze under large trees by the roadside. Suddenly, a beam of light from 50 kilometers away swept across the sky above the county town, giving all the townsfolk a terrible fright. They thought some bizarre celestial phenomenon, unseen in 1,000 years, was occurring. Mom, come out quick and look. There's a big white stick swinging across the sky. A little kid, having just finished his homework, was playing with the dog in his courtyard when he unexpectedly spotted the beam of light in the sky. He immediately started yelling at the top of his lungs, "What big stick? How can there be a big stick in the sky? What nonsense are you spouting in the middle of the night? Hurry up, take a bath and go to sleep. Go." A young woman, holding a yellowish, washed-out white short jacket, was hunched over, patching a worn-out shoulder. Hearing her child wailing like a banshee in the yard, she immediately came out. As it happened, before she could finish scolding the child, another beam of light swept across the sky, scaring the woman witless. She froze on the spot, staring foolishly at the pitch-black sky. "Mom, see, I wasn't lying," our school teacher said. "Lying is wrong." The little kid abandoned the family dog and argued triumphantly. Just then, another beam of light once again swept over the county town. This time, the entire urban area erupted in commotion. Many residents ran out of their homes, gathering at alley entrances and on the streets, all talking at once, discussing what on earth that thing could be. "Husband, quick, come see what that is in the sky. There's a white pillar constantly swaying up there. It looks terrifying. Such a huge thing, and flying so low I hope it doesn't fall from the sky," the woman shouted to her husband in panic and dismay. The man was in the middle of a cold bath with a wooden bucket. Hearing his wife's shouts, he ran out, shuffling in, his straw sandals wiping water droplets from his body as he looked up at the sky. The giant white beam of light moved with great regularity, sweeping across the sky every dozen breaths or so, and was extremely eye-catching. The man frowned and pondered for a moment, then suddenly remembered something. He said to his wife and child, "I know, that's the light from the lighthouse over in Waishan Prefecture." "Lighthouse, what's that? You're saying Waishan Prefecture made this big stick? What's it for?" The woman looked utterly baffled. "Dad, what's a lighthouse?" The child also asked curiously, edging closer. "What big stick? That's a beam of light from a lamp. Don't I often drive the cart to Waishan Prefecture to haul goods? Last month the chief went there and said they were going to build a lighthouse by the docks to guide the big ships coming and going. When I went again 2 days ago, it was almost finished. It probably just got lit today," the man explained. The woman listened, completely bewildered, and the child couldn't understand it either. "Dad, what's the lighthouse like? Why is it so powerful? Is the light on top stronger than the sun, shining all the way from Waishan Prefecture to our county?" "Heh, you wouldn't know. Our chief is the one who made that lighthouse. It's as thick as 2 houses and as tall as 3 or 4 city walls. The top is fitted with transparent glass, and inside there's a lamp bigger than a person. The outside of the lighthouse is painted white, and it has the 3 large characters Qimingxing written on it in red paint. Everyone in Weishan Prefecture says it's called the Qimingxing Lighthouse. Once it's built, the light on top is brighter than the stars. The man proudly flaunted his knowledge in front of his son. Then, Dad, what's glass? The child continued, determined to get to the bottom of things. Glass, huh? Well, I don't quite understand it myself. I heard the chief also led people to make it. That stuff is transparent, just like ice in winter. You know, ice, right? The stuff you break off the eaves in winter, it lets light through. Glass is pretty much like that, except glass isn't afraid of heat. It won't melt. Dad, I want to see the lighthouse too. I want to see the glass. Take me to Weishan Prefecture to have a look. The child's interest was immediately and thoroughly piqued, and he began to pester his father. You still have school. When would you have the time to go? However, it seems they sell small lamps like that in Weishan Prefecture. When I get a chance, Dad will buy one and bring it back for you to see. Really? Dad, you're amazing. Of course, Dad is amazing, but our chief is even more amazing. The chief is the one who led people to make that lamp. You have to study hard too. Once you've learned skills, you can work by the chief's side. When you also create some amazing things, you'll never have to worry about food and clothing, or about not having money. Soon, a great deal of news about the lighthouse spread among the common folk of Saitong County. Those who had just returned from Weishan Prefecture that day knew even more, and it was from their accounts that the people confirmed that today was the official startup day for the lighthouse. The initial panic completely vanished like smoke, replaced by immense pride and excitement. A lamp made by the Han tribe could shine for tens of kilometers. Such an achievement was in no way inferior to the first manned Shenzhou spacecraft flight in your previous life. It was absolutely incredibly awesome. The first night Qimingxing was lit, it caused a huge sensation. However, its sphere of influence was still primarily limited to Weishan Prefecture, the Lake Islands, and Xitong County. Although Liuyang County was closer than Xitong County, the majestic Babao Mountain stood between it and Weishan Prefecture, so the lighthouse beams were still not visible there. As for other places like Xingang County, Ruyang County, and Hanyang County, they were simply too far. And combined with topographical obstructions, none of them were able to witness the splendor of Qimingxing. News of the lighthouse's lighting only trickled through to them several days later. In the days that followed, after confirming that the lighthouse was operating stably, you began to select personnel and form a team specifically responsible for the lighthouse. This was a lean squad of only a few dozen members, part of the military establishment, with the resounding designation Tianqian Wei, Celestial Guardians, solely responsible for guarding the lighthouse. All members of the Tianqian Wei were preferentially recruited from experienced sailors. Their initial task was to undergo comprehensive training based at the Qimingxing Lighthouse, learning all aspects of the lighthouse's operation, maintenance, and upkeep. Once this group was adequately trained, they would be transferred to newly built coastal lighthouses to formally assume their posts. That's right, you built this Qimingxing Lighthouse not just for the construction and R&D teams to gain practical experience, but also to cultivate a professional lighthouse keeper force. The Han tribe's lighthouses were not simple oil-burning lamps. The mechanisms inside were highly advanced. A random person thrust into the role truly wouldn't be able to manage it. Furthermore, recruiting so many people at once was because you planned to implement a rotational system for lighthouse duty. This job of keeping a lighthouse was truly lonely, desolate, and isolating. The one in Weishan Prefecture was manageable, being inland with people coming and going. But coastal lighthouses were generally built in treacherous, remote sea areas, places so desolate that even birds wouldn't stop there, surrounded either by endless ocean or uninhabited barren islands. Days could pass without seeing a single soul, at most spotting a ship passing in the distant sea. And given the Han tribe's current situation, ships might not even pass daily. In such an environment, stationing one or two people at a lighthouse for an extended period would surely drive them mad from the isolation. So you decided that a Jiaoqi, a small banner unit of 12 men, would be responsible for one lighthouse, divided into pairs that would take turns on duty. For troublesome tasks like resupplying materials or repairing parts, which a single pair couldn't handle, the entire Xiao Qi would be called in to work together. The salary for lighthouse keepers definitely had to be high. After all, the job had a high risk factor, was exceptionally tedious and boring, and often required working through the night, turning day into night. Low pay would be unjustifiable. However, you weren't keen on spending too much money either. Therefore, you implemented a system of base salary plus allowances. The base salary was fixed. Whichever pair was on duty would receive a lighthouse keeping allowance for the duration of their watch. For however many days they were on duty in a month, they would receive that many days' allowance. This effectively meant you were maintaining a lean lighthouse keeping squad while paying the cost of roughly 2 people. Calculated this way, the cost was quite reasonable. After finalizing the training plan for the Tianchen Wei, you relentlessly began the design tasks for the Shuguanghao, Dawnlight Lighthouse, and the Yaoguanghao, Alcad Lighthouse. Among these, the Shuguanghao Lighthouse would be deployed on the reef to the east of Zhudao, Bamboo Island, to ensure the safety of ships traveling to and from the envoy missions. The Yaoguanghao Lighthouse would be deployed at the estuary of the Tang tribe to guide local shipping routes. Qimingxing Hao, Shuguanghao, Yaoguanghao. All the lighthouses were named after brilliant stars. This was also precisely the origin of the designation Tianchen Wei for this lighthouse keeping force. The Han tribe would use these lighthouses, shining like stars, to build its very own stellar network, illuminating all directions. In late August, with the Qimingxing Lighthouse project finally wrapped up, you promptly packed up your wife and children and headed home. A long list of tasks still awaited: designing new coastal lighthouses, new ocean-going vessels, and specialized fishing boats better suited for sea fishing. However, these were all tasks involving sketching on blueprints, so there was no need to stay cooped up in Waishan Prefecture. Returning home now was the perfect time to plan out the new house. The family traveled by horse-drawn carriage, and with a clippity-clop, they soon arrived back in Hanyang Prefecture. The very day you got home, you signed an order with a flourish of your pen: demolish the metallurgical workshop in Hanyang City. This plot of land was the chosen site for your new home. While not exceptionally large, it was more than enough for a luxurious grand villa with a private courtyard. Well, as the esteemed chief of a major tribe, what was wrong with living in a villa? It wasn't like you were building an imperial palace. It hardly counted as squandering resources and manpower. It was low-key luxury with substance, understand? Trivial matters like demolishing the metallurgical workshop naturally didn't require your personal involvement. You merely signed a few orders, distributing the clanging blacksmithing equipment within to the 3 counties under Hanyang Prefecture, allowing them to establish their own blacksmith shops. It was a good way to make the best use of everything. As for the casting molds and equipment, they were all shipped off to Xingang Prefecture to continue their useful life there. The bricks and wood salvaged from the demolished buildings. The old bricks were kept directly for building the new house, saving even the effort of firing new ones. A delightful outcome. The wood was sent directly to the nearby timber processing plant. Usable pieces would be used, and even if it meant sawing up beams to make a few tables, it was better than burning them as firewood. For the next few days, you shut yourself in, at home, burying yourself in a pile of blueprints. The lighthouse aspect was relatively simple. With the successful experience of Qimingxing, the subsequent Shuguanghao Lighthouse could be designed by simply modifying the Qimingxing plans. Considering the hellish sea conditions and unpredictable climate of the intended location, you decisively opted for natural rock as the building material. After all, you remembered from your previous life that several stone lighthouses abroad had stood firm for centuries amidst fierce winds and monstrous waves, like stubborn old holdouts, proving that stone lighthouses were quite durable. Once the material was decided, you immediately sent a letter via Carrier Eagle to Shoya, who was far away on Judao, Bamboo Island, instructing him to utilize local resources and quarry stones from the cliffs on the eastern side of Judao, carving them into standardized stone blocks. Regardless of when the lighthouse would actually be built, the materials had to be prepared first. Otherwise, when the construction crew arrived, what would they build with, empty-handed? Thin air, for the lighthouse's structure and shape, you chose a more stable, wave-resistant polyhedral design, finally settling on a regular octagonal tapered tower, because the tower body would be a full 60 meters high, like a pillar holding up the sky. The base had to be large to ensure stability. Moreover, this tapered design, wider at the bottom and narrower at the top, would provide more ample space in the lower part of the tower, allowing for more supplies to be stored for emergencies. The octagonal shape was chosen primarily because you wanted to directly paint directional markers on the tower body: north, south, east, west, plus the 4 intercardinal directions, a total of 8 markers. Painted on the outer walls, a regular octagon was just right, no more, no less. That way, even if ships at sea lost their bearings, they would know which way to go just by looking at the characters on the lighthouse. A lighthouse was inherently a landmark. Naturally, the simpler and more conspicuous, the better. All those fancy embellishments were useless. With the lighthouse sorted, next came the ocean-going ships and fishing boats. For ocean-going ships, even without new designs, the existing sailing ships could suffice for now. But fishing boats were a different story. The current ship types in the Han tribe were utterly unsuitable for deep-sea fishing. This absolutely had to be redesigned, and with utmost urgency. Designing a new ship first required someone to propose various performance specifications. However, these Han tribe natives knew jack squat. In this regard, only you yourself had a modicum of knowledge. First, determine the target users. Of course, it would be those struggling native fishermen, and these folks were poorer than church mice. Whether renting or selling boats to them, it wouldn't be easy. Therefore, the first hard requirement was, it couldn't be too expensive. Thus, costs had to be compressed. Compressing costs didn't involve any underhanded tricks. Even if you used the poorest materials, it was still a boat. So, the most direct method was to limit the ship's size, controlling its dimensions. But at the same time, to meet the conditions for deep-sea fishing, the boat couldn't be too small, or it wouldn't withstand the ravages of wind and waves. After weighing these factors, you decided to use the existing twin-masted sailing ship as a blueprint and modify it to design the new ship type. The reason for choosing this particular ship was simple. Its size was just right. A ship of 8 to 10 meters was similar to the Han tribe's small sampans, which could only be rowed. A bit in coastal waters. Venturing into the open sea with one was pure suicide. Ships under 20 meters weren't considered very large, but ships over 20 meters were too big and not agile. Therefore, a ship length of around 20 meters was most suitable. Then, comprehensively considering factors like the vessel's speed, stability, and cargo capacity, you set the length-to-beam ratio at 3:1. The final figures were thus decided: 18 meters long and 6 meters wide. Furthermore, because it was a sea-going vessel that also needed a sufficiently large cargo hold for the catch, and simultaneously had to withstand wind and waves and have enhanced seaworthiness, you eventually concocted a design with rounded ends both fore and aft, and a longitudinal cross-section resembling an inverted omega, O. This hull form had a large belly and a small opening, a deep draft, high stability, ample internal space, and a large carrying capacity. It had excellent wave-piercing performance when unladen, and was as steady as an old dog when fully laden. Actually, achieving this was quite easy. You simply set up a square cargo hold inside the rounded hull. This way, 4 hollow compartments would be partitioned around the cargo hold. These hollow compartments, like a swim ring, wrapped around the cargo hold, providing sufficient buoyancy when the vessel was fully loaded. To put it bluntly, it was like putting a lifebuoy around a shipping container. That analogy was quite vivid and apt. A ship, when it came down to it, was all about buoyancy. Then, by placing ballast in the rounded bottom of the hull, it acted like a roly-poly toy, making the vessel less prone to capsizing. Even if blown to a 45-degree angle by strong winds, the vessel could right itself again with the force of the ballast. Of course, this was just a beautiful theoretical concept. In actual operation, it was definitely not advisable to try any sea drifting with a fishing boat. That was just asking for trouble. As for comfort, well, forget about it. Just partitioning off a not-too-large cabin at the stern would suffice. Anyway, a fishing boat was for work, not for sightseeing tours. Having a place to shelter from wind and rain was good enough. What more could one ask for? Considering the balance front to back and side to side, since a cabin was added at the stern, some counterweight naturally had to be added at the bow. Otherwise, the bow would stick up like a proud little rooster. However, a slightly raised bow was actually better, because a slightly upward-angled bow was very suitable for cutting through waves and could better adapt to sea conditions in bad weather. Therefore, in the end, to increase the weight at the bow, you simply added a bowsprit extending diagonally forward, serving as a counterweight. The structure of the hold and the method of entry were also modified, directly borrowing the watertight compartment design of Fujian-style ships. The entire hold was longitudinally divided into many independent compartments. This had two benefits. First, it could reduce the danger posed by the ship taking on water. Even if one or two compartments flooded, it wouldn't matter. The vessel could still continue sailing and wouldn't sink immediately. Second, dividing the original large hold into many small ones allowed fishermen to sort and store their catch. This was unlike Yu Fu's previous fishing attempt, where everything caught in one net was piled together, the stinky and the foul all mixed up. With this compartmentalized boat, different types of catch could be kept separate. Fish with fish, shrimp with shrimp, each to its own. All of the above was just the basic design of the hull. You then developed two different versions based on this fishing boat, a twin-masted version and a single-masted version. There wasn't any particularly special meaning to it. To put it bluntly, one was cheap and one was expensive. The single-masted version had one less mast and one less sail, so naturally it was cheaper than the twin-masted one. However, such a boat would be a tad slower. Once the blueprints were drawn, you immediately sent them via Carrier Eagle to the shipyard in Liuyang Prefecture, asking them to first try building 3 prototype ships to see the results. The Liuyang shipyard was now teeming with talent, boasting a large number of experienced shipwrights and a group of leading cadres who could understand blueprints. Nowadays, they were fully capable of manufacturing new ship types based on drawings. After all, they hadn't been building ships for nothing these past few years. Everyone was no longer the ignorant novice they once were. They had all become technical experts. It was late August. Having sorted all this out, you started to feel an itch again, developing the idea of going on an inspection tour of the various counties below. Speaking of which, ever since these county towns were established, you really hadn't properly gone to see them. Now, without realizing it, more than 2 years had already passed. When the magistrate of Danshan County heard you ask about textiles, he became incredibly excited and immediately, eagerly led you on an inspection. Back last year, as the Han tribe's operations expanded and its population ballooned, the small textile factory within Hanyang City could no longer meet the tribe's ravenous demand for cloth. As for the textile factory in Ruyang Prefecture, it was high-end and sophisticated, specializing in silk production, but that stuff was far too precious for ordinary folk to afford. Seeing this situation, you decisively issued an order for the decentralization of the textile handicraft industry. The first to be affected, the first to benefit, were the 3 counties under Hanyang Prefecture. With strong support from the technical commando teams you dispatched, they each began clanking away, producing looms and other textile equipment. Then you encouraged the local cultivation of distinctive fiber crops and recruited women who were otherwise idle for pre-employment training. Finally, the county-level textile factories were established and flourished, Take Danshan County, for example. Its population was actually larger than Hanyang cities had been initially, and even now, the two places had roughly comparable populations. Therefore, Danshan County's local fiber crop yield was no less than Hanyang city's. As for equipment like looms, they were all produced by local carpenters, who meticulously copied designs under the hands-on guidance of master craftsmen sent from the prefecture. Thus, in terms of production equipment, Danshan County and Hanyang City were more or less on par. The most distinctive feature, however, had to be different raw materials. That's right, different raw materials. The Han tribe currently utilized several types of textile fibers, primarily ramie, followed by wool and alpaca wool, and then mulberry silk and tussa silk. As for cotton, that was still in the trial cultivation stage, far from becoming mainstream. But Danshan County was different. They had managed to develop several new materials on their own, namely flax, hemp, chingma, abutilon theophrasti, and jute. The reason for this 100 flowers blooming phenomenon was, naturally, that brilliant maneuver you introduced earlier, the merit-based nobility system. You had thumped your chest and declared that anyone who developed a practical invention or discovered a new usable material for the tribe could be promoted, get rich, and earn a noble title. Wasn't this blatantly compelling those who were desperately trying to become officials to proactively dig 3 feet deep in the mountains in search of new treasures? So the Han tribe's rapid development wasn't without reason. This was the dividend, brought by the system, solid as a rock. Plants like flax and ramie were actually as common as weeds in the mountains, growing everywhere. The key was whether you recognized them. You couldn't possibly know everything, and neither could the common folk. But this didn't stop those who yearned for noble titles from gathering them all up and taking them home for a series of inhumane experiments. Sooner or later, a blind cat would pounce on a dead mouse, and they'd manage to test out a few usable. The 4 new types of hemp here in Danshan County were concocted in just this way. Among hemp fibers, ramie undoubtedly had the longest fibers, practically the Yao Ming of the hemp world. However, the relatively shorter dwarfs, like flax, jute, and chingma, also had their own uses. With the Han tribe's introduction of glutinous rice cultivation, the technology for producing plant-based glue from glutinous rice also began to spread. With this plant-based glue, those previously less useful short fibers finally found their true purpose, turning waste into treasure. Flax was a high-grade item among hemp fibers. The linen cloth produced from it was much more comfortable to wear than ramie cloth, and also finer, practically the silk of plant fibers. Its quality absolutely crushed ramie products. It was a dimensional downgrade for ramie. Now, the linen fabric produced in Danshan County had become the highest-grade hemp textile product in the Han tribe. Wear it, and you'd be the sharpest dresser on the street. The quality of jute and hemp was similar to ramie, falling into the mid-range category, better than some, not as good as others. Of course, compared to the astonishing length of ramie fibers, they were mere little brothers. However, mid-range products also had their place, which was in the production of various functional fabrics, such as uppers for shoes, soles, and canvas for ships. These items were also highly sought-after bestsellers in the Han tribe. Finally, there was Qingma, which had relatively short fibers. All of this Qingma was used to produce ropes and sacks, and sales were equally gratifying, with demand outstripping supply. You walked into Danshan County's textile factory and were immediately greeted by a scene of bustling activity. The entire factory workshop was filled with the clack-clack of shuttles, a mixed symphony performed by the pedals and flying shuttles of the looms, a sound that made one's blood boil with excitement. You silently counted. In this workshop alone, there were 120 flying shuttle looms. In front of each loom, a skilled female worker operated tirelessly, her hands and feet moving as nimbly as if she were wound up. In the parlance of your era, this was full-power operation, all guns blazing. As for the combers and spinning machines, those were in another workshop. What kinds of fabric are mainly produced here? Tell me about them. You turned and asked the county magistrate beside you, your tone relaxed. Reporting to the chief. The magistrate quickly bowed and replied in a loud voice, We have a total of 120 flying shuttle looms. Here. 50 of them are dedicated to producing linen. Because linen is comfortable to wear, it sells particularly well in the summer. It also sells very well in autumn and winter, when it's mainly used for close-fitting underwear. Worn with an outer garment made of coarser ramie cloth. It's both warm and breathable. Therefore, the linen we produce is always a best-seller. The remaining 70 looms are all working at full capacity to produce canvas. As for things like sacks and ropes, we mainly send the raw materials directly to Fumaguan, horse tethering. Pass for them to produce. Because the scale of sisal cultivation at Fumaguan is the largest in the entire Han tribe. The magistrate finished his introduction in one breath, a proud smile on his face. You nodded, gleaning a good deal of useful information from his words. The Han tribe's current textile industry layout was quite interesting. Each place had its own characteristic industry, forming a differentiated competition. For example, Danshan County focused on producing underwear fabric and canvas, emphasizing comfort and durability. Mantian County, on the other hand, was built on the foundation of Xiaodie's home weaving tribe, with vast fields of ramie readily available as a resource. Their main products were outerwear fabrics and bedding, following a mass market, practical. Root Fumaguan, however, basically didn't produce fabric anymore. Instead, you had intentionally developed it into the Han tribe's sack and rope manufacturing center. It was all because that place was flanked by mountains on both sides, making it most suitable for growing sisal. And the characteristics of sisal, fiber, strong tensile strength and resistance to acid and alkali corrosion, made it the best raw material for ship rigging. You were also considering promoting sisal to Judao and the Tang tribe in the future, squeezing out some of their original agricultural land to produce ship rigging and canvas locally, thereby reducing transportation costs. As for Hanyang City, the big brother of these three counties when it came to textiles, it was a case of jack of all trades, master of none. Because Hanyang City did a bit of everything. It was proficient in many things, but the production scale of any single product couldn't compare to other places with specialized industries. Why was this? Nonsense. Because you were here, the biggest characteristic of Hanyang City's textile industry wasn't that any particular product had achieved economies of scale, but rather its position as the leader in textile technology for the entire tribe. Whether it was spinning technology, weaving technology, or dyeing technology, Hanyang City was undoubtedly #1 in terms of technical expertise. The textile workshop here was like a large R&D center. All new materials had to be trialed. Here first. Once mature processes were developed, they would then be disseminated to various localities for promotion. The flax spinning technology in Danshan County, including that clever trick of using glutinous rice paste as plant-based glue, was developed in Hanyang City and then fed back. As for Ruyang Prefecture, its textile industry was also quite distinctive. It was now the Han tribe's largest silk textile base, with a dazzling array of silk fabrics. This year, with your friendly suggestion and Xiao Di's personal involvement, Ruyang Prefecture successfully launched a silk-hemp-blended fabric. This fabric, made from a blend of tussa silk and flax, resulted in a finished product that was a reflective linen, even more comfortable than pure linen, and also brightly colored. Coupled with the subtle reflective effect characteristic of brocade, it immediately became a mid to high-end bestseller. Those petty bourgeois who couldn't afford pure silk could now afford this silk hemp fabric and experience a touch of understated luxury. There was no need to mention textiles in Xingang Prefecture and Waishan Prefecture. These two prefectures were simply not cut out for textile production. Xingang Prefecture was the emerging iron and steel giant, holding a pivotal strategic position in the Han tribe, dealing with hunks of iron day in and day out. Waishan Prefecture's business, apart from traditional agriculture, now primarily focused on developing local specialty economies like sugar refining, winemaking, and various high-tech industries that sounded impressive. After all, those few lake islands in the Great Lake were close to them, and proximity bred advantage. Luoyang Prefecture also had its own unique skills in the textile industry. It was the Han tribe's largest wool textile base and also its largest leather goods base. This was because after absorbing the Jianjiao tribe, almost all the Saiga antelopes had been brought here. Later, after pacifying the grasslands, because this was an open plain area and also adjacent to a large river, most of the goats and sheep brought back from the grasslands were also sent here. Consequently, Luoyang Prefecture became the prefecture, with the largest scale of sheep and goat husbandry in the Han tribe, with the highest output of both wool and sheepskin. Of course, the local people in Luoyang Prefecture also cultivated some flax and rami. These hemp crops, besides being used for paying taxes, were also used to respond to the blending call made by you, their wise chief, leading them to proactively develop a wool-hemp blended fabric. This fabric was very thick and extremely soft. With wool and flax as its main components, it was an excellent winter outerwear fabric with superb warmth retention. As for Dongxin Prefecture, best not to mention it. After all, it was a newly established prefecture. Just mining coal was enough to keep them overwhelmingly busy. They were completely swamped, so how could they have any spare time to think about weaving cloth? If they could get their core businesses of grain production and coal mining straightened out, that would already be a great accomplishment. You visited each of these prefectures and counties in turn. The autumn corn planted in the fields had already grown waist-high, a verdant expanse that was a joy to behold. By mid-September, you once again arrived in Luoyang Prefecture. It had been over 2 months since the advent of the carbide lamp. Now, it had begun to appear sporadically in various parts of the Han tribe. However, due to production limitations, large-scale popularization had not yet been achieved. Only Luoyang Prefecture and Weishan Prefecture, thanks to their geographical proximity, had received a larger share of the goods. After all, those closest to the source benefit first. The emergence of the carbide lamp began to subtly change the lifestyles of the Han tribe's common folk. This inexpensive yet super bright lighting device, following the commissioning of the Qimingxing Lighthouse, quickly spread among the populace, its fame skyrocketing. Every household prided itself on owning a carbide lamp, even treating it as a dream. Now, young newlywed couples in the Han tribe even considered the carbide lamp one of the essential items for marriage, its importance comparable to buying a car or a house in your previous life. With ample light for illumination, nightlife naturally became more colorful. In the past, people would go to bed early as soon as it got dark because there was nothing to do in the pitch black. Now it was different. As long as you were willing to spend a little money, no one would care if you kept your lights on for most of the night. The most obvious change was that carbide lamps began to be widely used in various public institutions. First was the schools. 5 or 6 carbide pendant lamps could illuminate an entire classroom as bright as day. The miserable era, when classes couldn't be held on overcast or rainy days due to poor lighting, was finally gone for good. Now, schools even had morning self-study sessions. As for the shops along the streets, this mainly applied to the 3 commercially developed prefectures of Ruyang, Luoyang, and Weishan, which had the largest number of street-side shops. Their business hours were now extended. They stayed open at night until curfew, which was around 10 o'clock. This allowed people who had been busy all day to go out for a stroll in the evening and relax. It even gave rise to night markets. This was simply unimaginable in the Han tribe of the past, which became deserted and devoid of even a ghostly shadow. As soon as darkness fell, the person most surprised by this was not just anyone, but Niu Wei, who was in the Han tribe, that very trade elder from the Xin tribe. This fellow had been studying abroad in Hanyang City for over a year. He could basically read and write commonly used Han tribe characters, and his communication with others had moved beyond awkward translations to direct conversation. This time, he heard a rumor that Yu Fu had returned from Judao, so he proactively requested to accompany you to Luoyang Prefecture. His main purpose was to welcome Yu Fu's return, incidentally inquire about the situation back home, and also discuss the cooperative matters between the Han tribe and the Xin tribe. There were some things that his tribe members far away in the Xin tribe might not know, but Niu Wei being in the Han tribe was as clear as a mirror in his heart. He was afraid his tribe would suffer losses in their cooperation with the Han tribe, so he made a special trip to assess the situation and get a better understanding. Your purpose in coming to Luoyang Prefecture this time was also to wait for Yu Fu's return. However, you wouldn't just sit around foolishly waiting, utilizing limited time to accomplish more things. That was your guiding principle. This trip, besides waiting for Yu Fu, you also had a host of things to do, such as inspecting the trial production of new ships, as well as matters concerning liquor packaging and sales. You were quite confident about the shipbuilding. You just took a glance. For the experienced Luoyang Prefecture shipyard, such a small boat was a piece of cake, presenting no difficulty. Apart from explaining the ingenious design of the watertight compartments to everyone, there was basically nothing that required your personal guidance. What interested you most, actually, was the baijiu, a type of strong, clear liquor, packaged glass bottles. This stuff was definitely a freshly produced novelty. Regarding how to use glass bottles to hold baijiu, your subordinates had come up with several proposals. Of course, the main options revolved around glass bottles with cork stoppers and glass bottles with screw caps. However, both options had their own characteristics, and neither was definitively better than the other. For a moment, you were truly undecided. Your indecisiveness flared up again.